Hi, this is Howard from Cycle Van. You're probably finding this video on FordVanWorld.com because we're talking about putting a ladder rack on a Transit today. This is a Transit 130 wheelbase full-size van, not the Transit Connect, the Transit 130 wheelbase, and we're putting a 10-foot galvanized rack on here. And the way that this goes on is by utilizing threaded holes that exist on the roof. If you look on the roof of this Transit, there's a bunch of plugs with holes underneath. There's 3 here, there's a couple here, there's more in the back. Not all these holes are interesting to us. There's only 3 on this side that are interesting to us because they have a threaded sleeve behind the little cap. This is a 130 wheelbase. The 148 wheelbase has 4 holes, and the 148 extended van has 5. So you can tell which ones are which by this indentation, this rectangular indentation. There's one here, there's one a little bit behind it, there's one in the back. These 2 are not what we're talking about. It's this one, and this one. And we're going to peel off the cap. We've got a nice sunny day, so this stuff is pretty soft. But I got this little plastic chisel, and I'm going to peel off this cover. And we're left with a little bit of gook underneath, in which case we're going to... There's a little ridge here too. A little ridge from the paint. Clean that gook off. Plastic chisel will not scratch. And we're going to take a little bit of acetone. And we're going to clean it off thoroughly. Make sure there's no ridge. And there's a threaded hole under here, but I'm seeing it's off center. See, it's not going to go in. We're going to actually have to take a little bit of this metal out. That's not that common, but it's common enough that we're going to deal with it by taking a pair of tin snips and just cutting enough away so we can get the bolt to thread in. Now, some threads have a little bit of primer in them, and we keep handy a 8mm tap on a handle, and we'll clean these out sometimes with this. Chances are you're not going to have this around the house, so you can take one of the bolts that we gave you and put a little bit of WD on it, and you're going to thread that in carefully back and forth if you find a little resistance. If not, if there's no resistance and it goes right in, and you're good to go. Anyway, we're going to deal with this offset hole in just a second. All right, so I got a couple of nice sharp tin snips, a right-hander and a left-hander, and we're just going to take a little crescent-shaped piece of metal out so that we can get kind of ridiculous that we have to do this, but what are you going to do? Okay, so we got enough clearance for that to work. Now we got these little burrs here. We're just going to push them down. Check it again. And we're good. So this bolt goes in. We don't need to clean up these threads, and they go in pretty good. Now we're going to peel off the rest of these caps. Hopefully we're not going to have to cut away this sheet metal. If we have to, that's something we got to do. But most of the time you don't run into that anyway. But it's a good thing we did so you can see what it's like. So none of this, these burrs are protruding up. And the next thing we're going to do is put these spacer blocks on, which cover that completely anyway. Okay, I got a little bottle of zinc primer on it. And we're going to touch up those little jagged edges. Is this horribly necessary? Well, we're going to be putting sealant on the underside of these blocks anyway, so maybe this is a little bit overdoing it, but what the heck. Got a nice new truck. You might as well be sensible about it. All right. So these are going to go on here like this. They're going to cover completely. All right, so now we're going to put the blocks in place. These blocks, the reason why these blocks are the size that they are is because there's metal structure under these holes, but it's a little bit away. So if these blocks were small, like let's say a little larger than the diameter of this sheet metal, it would only be resting on the sheet metal and would have a tendency to be pushed down. But this wide block spreads the load on the structure that's underneath. It's a little bit off to the side. So this thing is going to give you the strength you need, so when you load this ladder down, it's going to be capable of handling the weight. Okay, that said, we got this butyl tape that you're going to get with the rack, and we're going to put it just, it's going to straddle the paint line so that this little edge right here is directly under the middle of that. And just push it down. It's nice and soft because it's summertime, we're doing this. Oh, it's worth saying that when you're taking these plastic plug covers off earlier, if you warm them up with a heat gun, they're going to want to come off a little easier if you're dealing with this in cold weather. And the schmutz that's left underneath will also come off easier when you warm it up. You know, not going to burn it, of course, you're just going to warm it up till it softens up and you'll be able to peel it. Okay, so we set that on there, and you take one of the bolts that you got, just to get it lined up. You hold this above, put it in with like a couple of threads, and you're going to drop it right down on there so it's square. And now that's perfectly where it has to be, directly over the hole. We're also lucky enough that these holes didn't require any kind of cutting. They're directly right where they're supposed to be. So this one's got a little bit of effort to put in, but you can tell it is going to go in. Put a little grease or WD on it and it'll go right in. I take a tap to them, but chances are, like I said earlier, you're not going to have a tap. But these bolts, you'll feel they start to go. You just got to give them a little bit of push, a little tiny push. If you're going too hard, then you might be cross-threading. Make sure you're not doing that. Okay. All right, so we got all these blocks in place, and we brought the track up, and I put a little bit of butyl tape around each hole. And when we lay that on top, it's going to seal on here also. Yeah, we've got foam tape on here, which should act as a sealant, but this is double. This is double the safety as far as keeping water out, and it's always good to think that way. So we got that in place, and we're going to drop that on. Now, if you're working yourself, you can put a screwdriver in there like that. And then line up the back hole like that. So these things should be right where they need to be. To get these bonded washers with the bolts, they got like a little rubber gasket underneath, and you're going to push them on. And when they rest inside the track, they're going to seal. So you're going to start them. Sometimes you got to wiggle it to get it started. You can feel the threads engage, and then we're going to do the other two. And we're not going to tighten anything until it's all started. They're all started. Now, if you get a little bit of force, push back. Do not try to mash that through. You should have already checked the threads before we're doing this and made sure that they went in freely. All right, so we got these bolts all started. We got at least several threads started, so now is the time to tighten them up. And we're going to check and tighten the rest of them, same thing. So in place, this is what your rack looks like in place. Sometimes you get a little bit of that butyl tape that squeezes out. If you want, you can get it away, or you can leave it there. But you got a good seal. You got a seal under the block, on top of the block, and under the bolt head. So check everything, tighten it up, and we're going to be installing the rack on top of these rails. One comment I want to make about these rails is that these rails are 12 gauge galvanized steel rails, and they're a little wider than competitors' rails. And our blocks are 1/2 inch thick aluminum blocks, solid. The reason why we did this is because, as I explained earlier, it puts more pressure on structural members underneath as opposed to just sheet metal, so it's strong. And also, it's not resting on the paint. You still got an air gap under there. So you got a beefier rail system than the competitors are using, and it's up off the paint, so you're not trapping corrosive materials, leaves, nonsense under there. So this was just a step higher than what you're going to find from our competitors. All right, so now we've got the assembled rack on the roof. It's raised up with these foam blocks because the next thing we're going to do is put the stanchions, or the legs, into place. We got some pre-drilled holes on the side in this case. If you get this from us, generally the holes will be pre-drilled when we sell the rack for the Transit. And then we're going to mount these legs to the tractor we installed earlier using these spring nuts. And then we're going to put screws in to hold them in case we got to move them. We're not going to tighten them. And we're going to get the other two on this side and the 3 on this side all set. And then we're going to drop the rack down into there and put the bolts through and tighten. So the way to do that is put these spring clips in place. You just turn them and they kind of lock in place. Got these little grooves here. Lock in place. And you're going to take the 5/16 bolt. There's 2 of them for each one. You got a lock nut on them, and you're going to put them and we're going to put the rest in. And then what we're essentially going to do is then drop this down in like that, and then bolt them with these long bolts. Put a washer on each side, put a nut. And we're going to do that on the rest. Alright, so here's a finished rack. We got the legs in place, all bolted and tightened. Now you can see that the rack hangs off the back of the truck a little bit, so you can lean the ladder against the back of the rack and it won't touch the truck's paint. It's got the nice round rear rail so the ladder will lever right up and slide up into place. And that's it. So come and visit us at fordvanworld.com or call us at 732-238-3110. Thank you.